Better business internet is here. Blackfoot Communications delivers unrivaled reliability and dedicated bandwidth for businesses. And our fiber-based network is ready to meet your needs. Contact us today and ask about a free fiber build and new competitive pricing. Call 406-556-1700 or visit goblackfoot.com/connect. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications.
You know what? I think you watched the film from Saturday on Monday. Brings a little more clarity to the performance, but generally pretty pleased. And I think what we felt walking off the field is pretty consistent. So put out the depth chart, and that's a starting point, like we've talked about, as if we were playing this coming Saturday, but at least give the guys a baseline of where they're at. So yeah, certainly would open up otherwise.
All right, Ashley, why don't you start us? You were on first today, I think.
Sounds good. Well, Coach, obviously, I think the big thing, which I think we knew it was heading in this direction, was looking at who your QB1 would be out of spring ball. And obviously it was Matt McKay. And one of my favorite things you said in week 2 was experience brings execution. And so I'm just assuming that the experience aspect and out of spring ball, you were impressed with this play.
Yeah, I think impressed. He made strides. I probably the thing that, has impressed me the most is his approach. He's a guy that, you transfer in from a FBS school. I think there's a lot of times assumptions made, and I don't think Matt's made any assumptions. Last year, obviously, is your year one is a challenging year to go through. You get here and you're here for less than 2 months, and then you're gone for whatever, it would have been 4 months, then you're back. And then, obviously the fall was the fall, and then you get a coaching change. So I really appreciate his approach. I think he understands that he's made progress, but still has to make a significant amount. I think his ability to make plays with both his arm and feet are in front of him, but there's work ahead of him too. So he's a work in progress, and I can't remember who I said it to. I maybe said it to the whole group, but anytime you take on a new offense, you're almost hitting reset, no matter where you're at in your career. And the previous experience does matter, but it's to some degree it's just that, it's just previous experience. So pleased with Matt, but I pleased with the other members of that group too. This wasn't and isn't just some clear cut deal where we don't feel like another guy could go out there and play. So we'll keep working with them all and bring that group along to where we need to.
Absolutely. And one of the things you said on Saturday, which I really liked, was that champions are built in the summer. And so you said there are a couple of things that he needs to work on. What are you hoping that he focuses on this summer before he comes back to camp?
Well, I think with a quarterback, you learn and then you apply it first time through, like an offense. From an installation perspective, the second time through, things should come a little bit more naturally, a little less thinking, a little less predetermining. So through the course of the summer, obviously there's a physical component to improve upon, but just as they get, reps like in 7-on-7 through the summer going against each other, it'll act as a second time through the offense from an installation perspective. And then, that third time through will be in the fall. So I think it's just the game continuing to slow down, seeing defense, reacting to defense, as opposed to, trying to have all the answers before the snap. That may sound silly, but I think what happens post snap a lot of times determines the answers. And that's kind of what I think he's got all put together.
Absolutely. And then can you just speak on Tucker at that QB2 spot? Obviously, like you said, you're going to continue working with everyone in that room because it's always got to be a next man up mentality if something happens.
Yeah. Tucker, I think Tucker is the one with the most experience and his successful experience at that. So no different though. He was starting from scratch to some degree too. And I've appreciate his role within this team, regardless of if he's starting or not. He's a captain, and for good reason. But he's a guy that's competing too. By no means was he just going to succumb this job to anyone. And so he's working hard to keep getting better. And, you know, I've experienced it in particular the last 3 years coaching quarterbacks that you never know. We've went through our fair share my last 3 years at Wyoming. And then I go back to 16 and Josh Allen played every snap in 14 games. So my point is you got to be ready to play more than one guy, and more than one guy has to be ready to play. And I think we're working towards that. And Tucker understands that, and, you know, is while willing to accept to his role, I think he wants to keep working to improve himself.
And then last question for me, you had mentioned that Tucker's one of your captains. Have you figured out all of your captains for this upcoming fall season?
You know, interesting situation. The captains had been named, and you know, they were part of the interview process. And rather than kind of shake the ground on that level, so Lewis, Kidd, and Tucker are the two on offense. And then on defense, it's Chase Benson, Troy Anderson, and Monter Williams. You know what, we'll maintain. I could see why those guys were in that position. They had done a lot to hold things together. We've extended a leadership group, and too many names to go through, but I really feel good about those 5 guys and what they've done prior to me getting here. But then they've been a real asset from a leadership perspective, not only in the early stages back in February, but continue to be. So yeah, it's those 5 guys, and we'll roll with those 5 as our captains, and we'll try to continue to extend our leadership. But those are the 5 guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie, take it away.
All right, thanks for the time, Coach. So obviously, besides the quarterback battle, was there any other position group that you guys really kind of struggled with, or there was like a battle between, you know, the 1, 2, and 3 spot?
You know, let me process that. I know in the O-line, I think there was some shuffling around from what guys had played before. You know, TJ Session is the one that hasn't been on the game field, but I think, you know, he showed early on a real capability. So, you know, ideally that's hierarchy there in the O-line is still kind of an ongoing deal. You know, we put the depth chart out as is. So I think there's still some work to be done in the O-line. I think in the secondary, you know, there was maybe a little surprise that we put maybe Tyrell in the nickel spot, and he'd only really practiced, you know, that game was his only full practice, the only time that he tackled. Now he was doing some drills, and I think that just goes to show our depth there. We see the nickel spot no different than a starting corner. You know, but I think the competition, and not necessarily Tyrell, but the competition for those 5 spots, I think in the back end, I think there's still some work to be done. But, you know, again, if we played, it would be those 5 guys. And I was real happy. The reason I wanted to point Tyrell out, because, you know, about his play in his participation this last week kind of validated our hopes and thoughts of what he could be. And that would be that vital nickel position. So yeah, I think there's still some things to sort out, but you know, I think we feel pretty good about that starting 22 plus the specialists where we're at right now.
And then I know we talked a lot about it on Saturday, but the running backs, how deep that room is. Obviously, Isaiah and Elijah are listed as the 1 and 2 right now, but what were the conversations like with, you know, like Jahari and all that, you know, getting them involved as well coming up here?
Yeah, you know, there's some positions that probably, you know, 2 guys playing and putting on a depth chart is justified. I think that's a spot that we'd like to play, you know, 4 or 5 guys. You know, beyond the first 2 that were listed, you know, Lane's right there. Lane, you know, Lane will have a role for sure. Lane Sumner, and he's played effective football in the past, and we expect him to in the future. I think both Demarius and Jahari have flashed enough where you could say, hey, they're trending the right way to be in a position where they deserve game reps, but they need to keep coming. You know, I think that's the message to them. You know, flashing is one thing, but ultimately locking themselves in. So, you know, if we went to 1, 2, 3 Lane, and then the other 2, 4, 5, I think that's kind of how that would lie. But I think the goal is to have, you know, 5 capable backs, because at that position, you just never know either. I mean, each week, who's healthy, who's 100%, who's got the hot hand. I think that can always vary from one week to the next.
That's all I got for today. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Alex, what do you have for us today?
Thanks for the time, Coach. So some coaches are kind of tight-lipped about the depth chart. And obviously we aren't going into fall ball. This is post-spring season, but what is your opinion on releasing the depth chart to the public? You know, clearly we were able to see it, which was a pleasant surprise for us. So what is your opinion on that?
Well, I think the depth chart is more about our guys, certainly, and knowing where they're at. And we could just tell them, and we could let the outside world guess, I suppose. But I think for our fans, for you guys, I think it's fair to kind of get a sense for where we're at, and instead of keep guessing. I think sometimes you do have legitimate battles that can't be decided, that you withhold that information because you don't know until maybe a chance to go through fall camp. There's certainly some gamesmanship at times with the quarterback position, probably more than any other, that you might not, might withhold that information till the first guy walks out on the game field in September. And we're not in that position right now. So, each coach can handle it however they choose to. But I know for us, the most important thing was giving our guys a sense for where they're at. And, I think it's been a long time that anybody's seen the Bobcats on the field. So to give the public eye a glimpse at where we're at, that's okay too.
Do you think that's a motivator for the guys to kind of see a depth chart, see where everybody stands going into summer?
I hope so. I hope it's, the guys that maybe aren't where they want to be. It's a motivator. And I think the guys that have to this point maybe earned a spot, I hope it's a motivation to keep that spot, and I think all those battles at those positions, let's call them, I think it's important that our position coaches articulate that to these guys, give them a level of, hey, how close are you either to being caught, or how close are you to being able to pass someone by? And that ultimately has to be the motivating factor. And not only just that, but then, hey, as a position coach, here's what we see you needing to do to either hold that spot or, move the needle a little bit and keep pushing. So, yeah, I think it's there. And I hope our guys are motivated for a lot of reasons, but, a big one is to get on that game field.
And Tyrone and Tyler Bohannon, am I pronouncing that right?
Yep.
They obviously entered the transfer portal this past week. Did you have any conversations with them regarding that? And do you think that was a good decision for them?
I'll just leave it at, we had conversations, and I think, I wish them both the best in their next opportunities, and just leave it at that. But yeah, we talked, and I think as a program we'll move on, and I certainly hope they find a good landing spot as well.
Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
Better Business Internet is here. Blackfoot Communications delivers unrivaled reliability and dedicated bandwidth for businesses. And our fiber-based network is ready to meet your needs. Contact us today and ask about a free fiber build and new competitive pricing. Call 406-556-1700 or visit goblackfoot.com/connect. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications.
As always, so on that topic, are you worried, or could you see in the foreseeable future anybody else leaving the program, just with the change and all that? Are you worried that could be a sign, that could happen more in the coming weeks?
That's a good question. I think, we all had, I met with a lot of the guys, the position coach all met with the guys. So this is usually the week, as finals finish up, that that things do shake out a little bit. But at the same time, you know, guys get to the end of spring ball, see where they're at, and maybe take some time to let it all sink in too. So I don't know about worried. I think we have a pretty invested group of guys right now. I think moving forward, with the ease of being able to at least get yourself in the transfer portal and make yourself available, I think it's just, you know, it's paramount that as a program, you keep doing everything you can to, you know, make retention a priority. Recruitment is obviously the front end side of the coin as far as what we need to do to get guys here. But then, you know, what are we doing as a program to keep our guys invested? I think that's the bigger question as far as, you know, how are we going to handle this moving forward? I know this is relatively new, and I hope for all the student athletes that are in the portal, they'll find their way, but they won't. I mean, there's not enough spots for all the people, whatever sport it is. So this will have to be a process that works out. But I think relative to Montana State, it's, you know, I guess two things. It's do everything we can to create a good experience. And then, you know, honestly, if guys don't want to be here, that's probably not the right ingredients either. So, so that's kind of, what I'd have to say about that.
And on recruiting, what is going to be your approach this summer as a team? Obviously, things are going to be different than how they've been for a year now. So just how much are you and the coaches looking forward to getting to do that and expand that a little bit more than in the year last year?
I think we all learned a lot last year going through it, no matter where you were at, doing things a little differently. So obviously our ability to still be in that world of adapting here in May as we would typically be on the road, you know, really putting an emphasis on that same process this month, reaching out to high school coaches, you know, doing the things that make the recruits feel like, hey, they're engaging us, they're trying to get to know us. But then, you know, the good part is in June, we do get to flip to normal. And normal in June is now you have the opportunity to bring, you know, kids onto campus. So yeah, we're anxious to do that. I think we all made 2020 work into 2021, but to get back from a recruiting perspective, you know, nothing beats an opportunity to meet with someone in person, to, you know, from a camp perspective, be able to eval them in person. You know, so all that's right around the corner. So I think we're excited. Now, the challenging part for everybody out there is, you know, your eligibility didn't move within your roster. So it's not like we have all kinds of open spots either. So, you know, there's a lot of math going in on that end, but, you know, excited to move forward with recruiting for sure.
I'm curious what your approach will be with recruiting versus transfers, because in the past few years, it's been a program that's thrived with getting some FBS transfers. So I guess, you know, just how much do you weigh that when you're trying to, you know, finalize a roster, you know, getting a transfer versus recruiting?
Yeah, I think you want to start with a high school mentality. You know, the more high school kids that you can develop from the ground up, that's where you want to be. By no means are you ever going to be perfect in those situations. So when you're not perfect for whatever reason, and you have a gap at a certain position, I think that's when you look the transfer route. And whether that's 4-year transfer, 2-year transfer, I think both can be very, very good for your program. But then again, it's about finding the right type of fit, no different than a high school kid. And you know, so you have to do your homework on either. And you know, sometimes just like, you know, these kids that are transferring, the grass isn't always greener. I think for us as coaches, we got to realize that too, and really work with the guys we have here first. And then, you know, like I said, if we have any gaps, that's when we maybe go that direction.
And lastly, for me, this is a little off topic here, but about a year ago when George Floyd was killed, you know, that whole movement was a really heavy matter of discussion with the MSU football program. And I'm curious, with the, you know, verdict coming out in recent weeks, if that's been discussed with the program and how you go about trying to approach those sorts of topics with your players.
Well, I think having conversations is the number one piece to it. And that's where, you lean on your captains, your representation. That's why we've tried to spread that group both across all the position groups and then up and down as far as the age groups go. So that leadership group in all will have about 16 guys on it. And start there and be open to have conversations that are unscripted that could go in whatever direction, just so we have, those healthy, open, to those talks. And, for me, it was, it started with meeting with every individual back in February and, not so much being probing, but just, asking them about their experience here in Bozeman. And, honestly, through that, it was very positive. And, I think for me, it would be remiss just to leave it at that, though. So I think, while some things might seem like they're a long ways away, they're all still within our country here. And I think, anything that concerns our players concerns us coaches, I guess. And, I think it'll be something that, it's way more than football. I think when you're in the midst of spring football, you kind of live in that world and you're trying to finish up school and all that. But I think as we get in the summer, I think to have some reflection on this past year and all that's gone on and how it's affected our young man, I think will be the focal point. Nothing scripted, nothing specific necessarily, but very supportive of our athletes, I guess, at the end of it.
All right. I think that's all I got. Thanks, Brent.
All right. Before I turn it over to Paul for his questions, any follow-ups?
Just one quick one for me on a logistical standpoint. So obviously depth chart is out. Kids are going to go home for summer ball. What's the next step for football? Are they still going to do Zoom meetings at home? And when will they have to report back, getting ready for fall season?
Yeah, they kind of have the next month, depending on when they were able to get out of Bozeman here this week. I know some guys are done. Some guys have some virtual stuff done. Some guys actually have some tests for the week. And then there's a group of guys that are graduating this week too. So really have the next 4 weeks to do what they need to do. And then hopefully, part of that is continuing to, from a physical standpoint, to do the things they need to do. But then we'll get back at the beginning of June and have them here on a daily basis. And the working out component is the biggest piece to that, but that's when they can reconvene with their coaches. And not that they can't, again, through Zoom through the next month, but the priority this next stretch of time will be to kind of be able to get away just a little bit. And then, hit the ground running when we get to June. So, they'll have a pretty rigorous stretch in June and July to get ready for August. And the bigger part is physical, but then there'll be some learning that can occur too during that stretch.
Thank you, Coach.
All right. The regular crew, you're welcome to stay. Paul might have some questions that don't interest you a lot, though, so you can do what you want to do. Paul Burns, the time's yours.
All right. Thank you. Coach Paul Burns. Tell me about your offensive line. Are those 5 guys pretty fluid in terms of where they're going to play, or do you see this person is in this spot all season long?
Well, each year's is a little bit different, and I think we're in a position where, excuse me, you'd like to have a couple guys double trained, and I think that's where we're at. You look at the guys who have played in games. Lewis has played probably more guard than he's played tackle. Connor Woods played center, and Zach Red's played center and now as a guard. Connor Wood and Taylor have been a little bit more locked into their positions. Cole Sane moved to center this year. TJ Sessions, I mentioned as a tackle. We'd like to kind of double train him as a guard. So ultimately, wherever you're at, you get your best 5 out there. And we made some good progress on just some flexibility, even through the spring with the way things played out. Taylor Tuiasosopo was hurt a bunch of the spring. So really Lewis Kidd had more reps at guard in the spring than he would have at tackle. And that's okay. I mean, that's just part of where we're going, and it allowed TJ to get out there a little bit more. So yeah, it's not just this, hey, here's our 5 starters, and that's the only spot they're going to play. And if they get hurt, here's these 5 backups that would naturally plug in. There's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of fluidity to that group.
So I'm mainly focused on Tui Taylor. With him being hurt some this spring, is that have you had a chance to really evaluate him because he's wasn't a full participant?
Yeah, that's a good question. He had a foot injury coming into the camp that it was kind of bothering him the last stretch in the weight room, and then he kind of got dinged up in the middle of spring ball. So no to your question. I don't think we had a complete evaluation whatsoever. Was able to go out there and really the spring game was his best evaluation opportunity, and I think that I'm glad we were left with that. I'm glad it wasn't going back to the first couple of days, but I think the evaluation there is a work in progress, and I know he was a guy that we maybe had designs on double training as a center and guard, and when you don't get those reps, it's harder to approach it from that perspective. So a little bit of catching up to do on his end, and we want him to be healthy, and he is right now, and that's the good thing. So he can, I think he can take this last couple days of practice between Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and hopefully really run with it.
And now can I switch to defense? Your defensive backfield, and now I'm focused on Okada. Is the same sort of question? Are those 5 guys back there somewhat fluid, or are they penciled into particular spots? Yeah,
you know what? In a similar fashion, I think there can be some of that double training that goes on in the secondary. Tyrell, a good example, can certainly play corner, and we want to be able to have, again, probably our best 5 guys out there as much as we can. Ty, okay, he's probably going to be a strong safety, but there's some, short yardage packages where Rylan Ort, his backup, can come in there, and there are 2 safeties. They're, our best tacklers back there. To get to where we feel comfortable with, say, Kendrick Bailey's growth, is he a guy that is a plug in at free safety and maybe at nickel? I think those are some of the things we're still working towards. We're working towards 8 guys ideally for those 5 spots, and to get that, it's not 10 for 10 spots. It's 8 for 10 spots essentially when you're looking at all the backups. So guys have to be double trained, and I think we got a smart group. I think we got a group that's willing to learn, and Ty, you referenced, is certainly at the top of that list as far as intelligence and everything.
You finally had a chance to kind of see your coaching staff in action, particularly with the spring game. How do you evaluate the offensive coordinator? How did he perform on Saturday?
That's a loaded question, because I've been in that. I know full well when you're calling a spring game and your quarterback is in a gold jersey and your offense is somewhat vanilla. I didn't do a lot of evaluating of him. It's more, did he show anything that we didn't want him to, that type of thing. But no, I was pleased with Taylor through the course of the whole spring. I think that's how you look at it. I know while I would really want to help him and support him, I don't want to get in his way necessarily either. But our offices are right next to each other, so we can bounce a lot of things off each other. And I think that's why it was important for me to, have a guy that I really trust, because he's going to take my ideas and run with them and blend, his thoughts. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And, I think we're in a good place, I guess. That's probably the best way I could put it. But I know that we'll evaluate spring a little bit further as we go. We'll go back and watch everything and, try to just narrow his focus, because that's always, I think when you're in that position, when you can have someone that's been in those shoes be able to assist you along the way on what direction you're going, what's too much and what's not enough, I think that's that's very helpful.
Okay, and the same question about your defensive coordinator. I mean, did he, how did he look in the middle of action?
Yeah, you know what? I've been very pleased with Freddie and his approach. Certainly working shorthanded through most of the last stretch of spring, I guess, and in particular on Saturday. But rallied the troops. And what I saw out of our defense from that first Saturday, talking our first scrimmage to the next scrimmage to the last one, is I just think our understanding of what we were trying to do, and fundamentally playing with leverage and tackling improved each week. So I think the message, the important messages are being not only given to our players, but they're responding to them. And we got a ways to go, and we were terribly shorthanded on Saturday, but I was still pleased with the effort and the way those guys went about it.
Is there a certain amount of, I don't know, thought process, maybe change the thought process for those guys coming into the Big Sky Conference versus, being elsewhere in years past?
I think that's a fair question. I look on the defensive side, Freddie's coming from the Mountain West, which I'm familiar with, obviously. And, you gotta defend what the league plays, not what you've defended in another league. I think from Taylor's perspective, he's been at Oregon and Mississippi State the last couple of years, not calling plays, but in those leagues and being part of that process. It kind of goes the same way. I mean, you want to do what you do, but it still has to prove to be effective against the Big Sky defenses, not necessarily, what you've worked against the last couple of years. So I think they're a little bit different approaches. I think that the defense is a little bit more dictated by the offense than vice versa, but I think having a good sense for what the teams in our league do is very important.
Okay.
Better Business Internet is here. Blackfoot Communications delivers unrivaled reliability and dedicated bandwidth for businesses. And our fiber-based network is ready to meet your needs. Contact us today and ask about a free fiber build and new competitive pricing. Call 406-556-1700 or visit goblackfoot.com/connect. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications.